Hello, friends. I'm very excited to be bringing on Peggy today, who is a somatic and integrative practitioner, and we're going to learn all about that. Darcy, can you read her bio to get us started?
Absolutely. As the founder of the Sisterhood Agency, a women's alignment coaching platform, and the creator of Daughters of Culture, a women's ethical, sustainable clothing brand, Peggy combines her expertise in somatic attachment therapy, trauma healing, and coaching to empower women and men on their healing journey. Peggy is passionate about teaching embodiment work as a transformative tool for exploring our human evolution, fostering healing, supporting growth, and facilitating integration. With a compassionate and holistic approach, she guides women and men towards reclaiming their inner harmony and embracing a life of alignment, resilience, and self-discovery. Peggy's expertise emphasizes her dedication to teaching embodiment work and promoting holistic healing and growth. Through her extensive knowledge and experience in facilitating inner child healing and nervous system regulation, Peggy fosters a safe and nurturing space to embark on healing journeys. And from personal experience, also want to say that Peggy is an incredibly present individual who invites just really deep and sincere conversation. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about how that's evolved professionally.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I feel so blessed and just welcomed into this space. So thank you for just creating this lovely space for me.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Well, we're glad that you came on and just super curious about all the beautiful work that you're doing. And I'm trying to um see where we want to go. Let's start with your story. Like what got you into this kind of work? So
Okay.
about that. Yeah.
I think what people find interesting in the work that I do is it does have a lot to do with my history and what led me to this work.
Mhm.
Because originally, coming from the fashion background, I actually went into product development and I just, loved working with like being able to make products. But as I was in the fashion industry, being a woman that is of Armenian descent and coming from the Middle East, all of a sudden, as I'm like unraveling my work ethics, I'm just like learning about all my intergenerational trauma that started showing up in my teenage years and in my 20s, and not having a support system that could hold so much of my own dysregulation and confusion around how to express that I had anxiety, how to express that I needed help, in a culture that was really specific to my own upbringing. So it really forced me to like dive deep into, okay, well, what options do I have here, And so I started doing a lot of inner deep work in my 20s. And even in my teenage years, I snuck myself into therapy without even telling my parents.
Mm.
So I was like, somebody's gonna have to help me here because my family system really, they were immigrants, and they were working really hard to just do what they needed to do to keep life moving day to day. And I really needed to find my own way. And there was a lot of loneliness in that, but also a lot of like hopefulness, and like I knew I was gonna find something like on the other side. So I just started really getting into my own healing, my own yoga therapy, going to retreats, Kundalini. I mean, you name it, I did it. Ashtanga yoga. I put myself in very interesting, crazy positions, like because I was really wanting to see what was on the other side of the anxiety that I had that was really suppressed through my childhood. So as I was working, I spent my 20s and my early 30s just diving into self-discovery. And then from there, I just started getting more into the study program, studying to actually be able to hold people through this because I really became the vessel of like, if I can overcome this, I feel like there's something here that I could support others walk through. And so I really needed to know that I can see myself through it. I wasn't willing to hide from those parts of myself. Like I really kind of faced it forward. And so slowly but surely the fashion role started changing and I started doing a lot more healing work and studying somatics and different modalities, Reiki, yoga facilitation. And I just found my own way, like my own method of what supported me. And from there, I just trusted myself enough to know that if I could really mold my life a little differently in the direction that felt more peaceful, more aligned, trying to find that right word. It's not easy to find those words in this moment, but really just like um, really understand like where your place is in the world, with all that comes with our different nationalities and all the cultural things that come with us to find your own voice. So through the work, I became more and more confident in that. And I started to trust myself to open my own practice around it after my studies. And it was, it started building one step at a time. And I'm just so grateful that people trust me with this work. And I know it's such a space that safety and trust is just a big part of that foundation that allows people to continue going deeper in these modalities that I work with. I don't know if that answers some of what you asked, but there's obviously so much more. But I think the lineage of where I come from, Middle Eastern, Armenian, the Eastern European, like there are certain things that kind of come with being born in family systems, from those places. So it's been helpful for me to work with clients who come from similar backgrounds
Mhm.
because there's a relatability that we really understand and we're able to move through fairly quickly. So yeah, that's where that is.
Well, I love that you have so much heart into your work from a personal place and that you've done your work. Because I think sometimes people skip over that part and just want to go to helping people and they haven't fully gotten themselves grounded in the work themselves. So I appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Thank
Uh,
you.
so,
I do feel like people can feel that energy, like after a few sessions, especially that authenticity of like, okay, is this practitioner really walking the walk, walking the talk? Like, are they backing it up by showing up in their own life? It's so important for me. Keeps me accountable too, I could say,
mhm,
you know, because that's what I've chosen. So,
absolutely, absolutely. Um, so can you share a little bit about what this work looks like?
hmm hmm
And
Yeah.
that would be helpful. And maybe tie in, the types of people that are coming to you. I know that you just work with women.
hmm
So it'd be great to kind of understand
Yeah.
types of people you attract. Mhm.
Yeah, I always like to mix in a little bit of something random, but my Venus is in Taurus and my rising is Taurus. So that involves a lot of beauty and
Mhm.
sensuality and like feminine attributes. So the space that I actually created in the back of my house is like a 300 square foot space I call like a portal. And I've put a lot of love and heart into as soon as somebody walks in, I want them to kind of feel like they were just kind of transported. I'm right outside of Culver City. So like, oh, you're in LA, but you're like, you kind of are in like Topanga or something, or you're like in Big Bear, the mountains. So I wanted it to feel very beautiful. And that's kind of the first layer where people can walk in and the first thing they kind of say is like, oh, wow, I can really feel the energy in this space. And a small space like this can really contain so much healing work that has been done day after day. I mean, there's been nothing but breakthroughs in that room. And when you think of it like that, it's concentrated energy that continues to build resiliency and a space for clients to come in and all of a sudden like they're able to access a lot of healing within themselves fairly quickly. And that's kind of the goal. I will have a lot of clients say to me, "Oh my God, that felt more powerful than years of talk therapy that I've done." And what I say to them is actually, no, those years of therapy you did was is what led you here. Don't override those, that part of you that needed to talk until you're ready to really sit with your body. Because sitting with your body and moving through the practices that I do, which are a lot of block work, pelvic floor opening, working with certain nerves and muscles that are connected to where we store our trauma, moving into the chakras, kind of like checking in if the chakras are open and energetic, getting into the jaw and seeing if the jaw and the vagus nerve, the muscles around the neck are open and free. So when I start working with the body, it starts to unravel a lot of the conversations so many of my clients have in their therapy sessions. So I always say it's like a beautiful extension that really prepares you to sit with yourself in a deeper way. Because, I know from being in yoga day after day, we sit in the heat and it moves us through just being able to be like, okay, like let what wants to come up, let it unravel. And my own story, my client's story, everyone has such an individual experience. So it's never one size fit. But I will say, as soon as a client walks through the door, there is a level of safety that they just feel from being held in that space. And it's everything that's led them there, everything that they've done. You know, I don't like to take credit for what happens in that room only because I really do believe it's a combination of things that lead you to the body being one of the most powerful aspects of ourselves to sit with, and it takes so much bravery to get there.
Mm.
So yeah, and just all of it, all of it together, I think is an important piece for me to create. Like you mentioned, creative healing. There is really a creation of the space of inviting a client into something that is unique and not like a copy and paste of how anyone else is doing it. I really try to find that creativity within myself, and I keep kind of playing with that energy to bring that into the environment.
So what would it feel like if I set up a session with you,
Hmm.
I expect?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you'd walk in and you'd sit comfortably. The whole space is kind of cushioned in this really cozy way. And I do actually do a little bit of sound healing as well. I have a gong, which I love using just to kind of regulate the space. It has a yin yang symbol on it, which I love, the harmony and balance of yin yang. Um, but you would come in and the beginning would be about like 10 to 15 minutes of just telling me like what's been going on, a little bit of your history, not like too much, but like to the point where whether there's a block in an area of your life, like whether it's relationship, whether it's career, whether it's financial, we start to work with, what it is that you're sharing with me in that moment. And even in that moment, I'll start to pause the client, yourself, as I'm working through, let's see where these words land. Where are you feeling it most when you start to talk about that hard experience, that hard moment? Do you notice anything start to heat up? Do you notice any part of your body that starts to feel heavy? And so what that does is it pauses them from being so intellectually talking about the incident versus they're actually able to start sitting with their body's felt experience. And what that does is it interrupts them and starts to get them more into their body. And they start to realize in that moment, wow, like I didn't realize I was carrying it in my chest. And I've just like been going through life from this place of like this heavy chest, these heavy shoulders, and I've just made that okay for myself. Why have I done that? And so we start to bring a lot of compassion and understanding and the whys, why have I've, you know, almost like created this suffering where I've just normalized it. So I call it somatic mapping, and we just kind of start mapping the body through somatic language. And then that way you start to connect to your body deeper. And then I'm a big believer that when you start to do that, then when you go into your yoga class or you go into your meditation or whatever it is that you do day to day, those moments will start to resurface again. And you'll have these like hidden voices that will start to speak louder to you. Because as soon as you sit with a practitioner and you start to say these things out loud, I swear there's something so powerful that starts to vibrate back to yourself.
Mhm.
And we know it. We know we've all been in those environments. So we make it real. We validate that experience and then it starts to replicate. And I always say, like you'll start having profound dreams. You'll have profound aha moments that will start to surface throughout your days. And it's not always going to be in this room and in this space together. So we'll have that dialogue. We'll work through some of those layers and then I'll get them down, my clients on their back. They'll start doing block work. I work with the ball. I love working with straps, working with muscle tension where we hold tension in the body and then we release it. So it activates that parasympathetic state so deeply that all of a sudden, all the client will just start to cry out of nowhere. And I won't even really truly understand why that moment happened in that way. But I love what Darcy was saying about like my presence is what's the most important is just holding presence in a way that you feel safe and you feel held. And it's almost like that reparenting kind of happening in that moment where we can co-regulate and bring new regulated safety as a dual dynamic environment versus having to hold it all by yourself.
Mm.
So there's a lot of layers that I will address and bring up because I have noticed even in my own healing, so we talk about this in yoga, like trauma happens in relationships, most of the time.
Mhm.
And so what we're doing in this work is rewiring that so we're not re-traumatizing it. We're rewiring so the body feels incredibly loved and present with someone who is holding that space for them.
Mm.
So there's a lot of mothering energy, and there is definitely a motherly feeling in this space, and not from a religious perspective, but I do have a Mother Mary symbol at the top of my space, just kind of looking down and reminding us of that pure mother's love.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yes, I
Is
hope
there,
that was helpful.
yeah, yeah, is there touching? Is there talking?
hmm
Is Can you share a little bit about that space?
Yeah, all
Mhm.
of it. Yeah, it starts with talking, and then it goes into laying down and starting the practices. And then I always ask if there's any injuries that I should know about, if there's any parts of the body that like I should not be hands-on with. Just really creating that clear space because everybody is so incredibly different. And even as I move from client to client in one day. I always come back to the foundation of those important questions to create safety, because the last thing I'd ever want to do is re-traumatize any of that space that they have come into to repair. So as soon as I have that information, I will be hands-on. And again, working with the body, and we do play with tension a lot. So what I'll do is sometimes I'll work with pressing into certain pressure points, and I'll ask the client to breathe into that part of my hand where they're kind of feeding it energy and then they're letting it go. So it starts to I think the Reiki background that I have starts to really help me intuitively recognize where some of the trauma is stored in their bodies.
Mm.
So everybody's where their trauma is stored is so unique and we get to find it together. And it's kind of an exploration when we do that.
Hmm. So when someone comes into a session with you, what do they typically feel when they leave?
I would say they definitely feel like relief. They feel lighter. They have a hard time like going back into regular life because they just want to like really embrace what they just experienced. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll cancel the rest of the day and go to the beach and
Mm.
go to the park and be in nature. Um, and I get a lot of beautiful text messages after sessions, just validating like if they had an emotional release or if they had sometimes anger will show up and they like finally feel like I have now that I'm starting to work with men, a lot of men will come to me and say like, oh, I'm not supposed to be angry, or I'm not supposed to like, so they bring that energy, and we work through that, and they leave feeling more seen and more heard. So most of the time, there's just beautiful aspects, of that unfolding, and it looks so different for each person, you know? So yeah.
How many sessions do people typically work with you for?
I always say it's good to work like as the first package just feels the most organic to do 4 sessions and just kind of see it, 4 times and just get a full cycle. One session is really great if you've just done a lot of healing and you've done a lot of body work and you just want to kind of come in and see if there's something a little deeper or something maybe you haven't been able to tap into. But I do think, my work does really well when it's a little bit more, at least like seeing each other for 4 sessions really grounds in the practices and the work so they can take that into their life and do some of those practices on their own. I will provide them links for some of the products that I use. So they have their own little like home, like altar and setup where they can practice in between the times that they're able to see me. So I have people coming from the valley. I had a client here that came from Mexico this weekend. So she came here for like a 3 hour intensive. And we're going to continue the work actually virtually because she lives in Mexico. So there's always different ways that if the client is really committed, like they're really like, they feel that this is what they've been missing and they're ready for it, then we'll figure it out like one way or another. And I'll always give my suggestions of like, this is, a lot of it is intuitive, but when I start to hear what results they want to get out of their life, like it's not usually just a 1 session thing. So whether they want to do it on their own and kind of maintain it and come see me once a month, there's different ways to kind of approach it that will work with the client's budget and their scheduling availability.
Hmm. Darcy, do you have any questions? I'm going to come back
I
around.
do have questions. So I'm going to take us on a little bit of a tangent, but I promise I'll circle us back. I've got
Right.
to know what led you from into Sisterhood Agency from Daughters of Culture because you were in this entire, I mean, maybe it wasn't an entirely different world, but we're looking at you're creating this ethical, sustainable clothing brand. You're more in the fashion space, creating community there. And then you've created Sisterhood Agency where there's so much emphasis on like conscious love and attachment, attachment theory, therapy.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering what's the bridge between the two?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
That's a really good question, and I think it's definitely an important one because like, Daughters of Culture is and was my baby, like truly, and there's so much beauty that was threaded through Daughters of Culture because of the name originally coming from like my mom and like her 5 sisters and my grandmother and all the creative women that I was raised with that were designers, artists, sewers. My mom is a sewer, and so I felt like, and this is going to sound kind of interesting, but like my healing was happening through Daughters of Culture because I had to leave our whole family in the Middle East. So when I came here with my parents, I think it was my own way of healing and still feeling connected to my family, even though they weren't here. And so I didn't realize that like fashion and that creative portal from my family in the Middle East became my connection to, okay, like if I do this thing that I love doing day to day, it also makes me feel like I'm still part of that community that I don't have anymore. So again, like really interestingly, like we could sometimes look at our careers and look at like we can go deeper and deeper, like, but why do we choose that thing? Why are we so passionate about doing that thing every day? And so it was really like a powerful when I woke up to that. and started getting more into the somatic world, I was already, my clothing line was for yoga. So it was a yoga inspired clothing line and ceremonial clothing. So women would wear it for leading sound baths and ayahuasca ceremonies and different, different ways that it was a celebration, through the clothing. And through that, I started meeting incredible women. And it just kind of started being nurtured and like just growing in that organic way where women started wanting styling sessions with me. I was like, okay, like it feels very natural for me to do these things. I also feel like there's some people in this world that are not meant to just do one thing for the rest of their life, and there are people that are meant to do one thing. I think it's important to listen to your own unique way of that, how that unfolds. And so, and then, you know, I don't remember like Darcy the like the day that I like decided to like flip the script. Like I don't really I wish I did. It would be good to like have that anniversary or something down, But it was really like kind of a smooth transition, and for a while I was holding them both.
Mhm.
So I was like kind of splitting myself into like two roles, and it started getting really heavy on me, and I had to like step back and be like, could I leave myself from being the designer? Like it was like so much of who I was. And it took a while, to like kind of step away from being the designer, the more, I'm creative in different ways now, but like really step into being a somatic practitioner. And so when that started unfolding and I started building my clientele, I felt like that was proof. I was like, oh, it's, I feel backed. I feel supported. Like everything that's around me and helping me is moving. And I always think that's a really good sign when there's momentum. And we're all like pivoting in different ways. And that was my pivot. And my customer was kind of the same though. The customer didn't really change. It was me that really changed with how I was supporting them. Because I did have a lot of clients actually from my Daughters of Culture community that ended up working with me virtually, doing somatic work, which was, I was like, how great is it that they trust me? Like, they were like moving with me. How amazing is that?
It shows so much alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
thank you for sharing that. I was going to ask you a question about regulating, and I'm realizing that you answered it
Yeah.
without me even asking that there's healing and regulation that gets to happen through embodiment. And embodiment is a practice that is like it's a practice, but it's also the clothes we wear have an
Mm-hmm.
impact on what it feels like and how it can evolve to be in the body. Like I think just on a textural level, the energy and frequency of material, the memories it sparks. So I'm seeing also the bridge there of, how clothing and our attachment, how we attach to ourselves and to others are braided together. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just a beautiful bringing together, and the clothing's just exquisite. So I'm
You.
grateful that you followed your creative side. We talk about that a
Yeah.
lot on this podcast, like creative healing. What is that? And it's
Mhm.
living. We live through experiences, and that's how so much healing and creative expression happen.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's so beautiful, Yeah, I felt like, in one aspect, clothing is like an external expression, and then the somatic work is like really it's very internal. So they do blend really beautifully together. Like I still do really love, you know, going on a nice shopping spree and going and buying clothes, but I am more mindful with what fabrics I buy. I love buying like the cottons and the linens and what we like to call in fashion now the high vibration fabrics. But it's all like a blend of expression of that embodiment of because somatic work, you know, I, over the weekend when I did this group event, we talked about like, we move through our trauma, we sit with our trauma so we can access more joy and liveliness, like an aliveness, so we can actually access it so we don't numb it. So the combination of all these things just continue to bring us into alignment of like This is me at my fullest expression. This is Darcy at her fullest expression. That's Michelle at her fullest expression. What does that look like for you? You get to explore it, get people on your side to support you because we all have areas we're stuck in. It's like how we go to yoga. We go to our teachers because I need to be held too in that space, in that way. So it's just beautiful to kind of see that energy moving around, you know? It's kind of like the theme around Burning Man I've heard, even though I've never been. The collective space, which is like everyone's kind of supporting each other in their gifts.
It sounds like there's vulnerability and bravery built in to not only what, the people that come to you, they're coming with this, but also you're meeting them there in not having this clear agenda of this is what we're going to do now, and really being present and then going, okay, like what is asking for attention
Yeah.
right now? And I saw you've had a conscious love training with Shalina Ayana
Hmm. Hmm.
and some Reiki and
Uh-huh.
trauma informed. So
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
bringing a lot of philosophies in to just have as a frame of reference.
Yeah.
Exciting.
I think it's really important to do that because as I kind of get deeper with my clients, like the relational piece is just as important. I've done study work with like Gabor Mate, Peter Levine, Esther Perel. Like I love these like therapists. They're just so incredibly wise and also like EMDR modalities working with the right brain and the left brain. Like I mean, I'm still like people always ask me, they're like, well, Peggy, will you teach me? Can you create a method? I was like, and I sit with that because of course the ego is like, oh, okay, let me package that and so I was like, no, I'm very much a student in my 40s. My 40s, I'm still very much, taking in a lot. And then, we'll see what happens in my 50s
I
if I
have
get if I get there.
we were just talking about how 70 is like the new 20 for a certain generation. I have one more question.
Yeah.
So, many of the people that are in this community, but also that we work, Michelle and I work with, are very immersed in, mental health treatment. They're in
Mhm.
recovery from active addiction or drug abuse. Maybe they're
Mhm.
on new medication. So there's a lot going on, just biologically, physiologically. So I'm
Mhm.
wondering, with that in mind,
Mhm.
how would you either work with or maybe not work with someone who's in more of that transition state, in more of I want to say a little bit more of a fragile state?
Mhm.
Or do you do you have certain people that you're like, I'm not the right fit for you right
Mhm.
now, but when you're
Mhm.
at this phase of the journey, because I know there's going to be people listening who might be right kind of in between phases.
Sure, sure. Yeah, it's definitely there's like that sweet spot of this work, somatic work really bringing you into your body, right? And so there a lot of your senses and your sensations and you'll start to activate some of that. And so what I normally will always do is have like a very detailed intake form that hopefully the clients will be very honest with where they are in their journey. And based on that, I will assess if I feel that it's the right step for them or if we need to wait or if we need to pair my work with like a traditional clinical therapist. So maybe the combination of my work and someone who's very clinical might be that perfect pairing. And again, looking at it from like lifestyle integrative, like, the goal is to help each and every client in the ways that they are ready for in this moment, but also give them options of what they could be moving towards in a few months, when they feel a little bit more grounded and really being able to take in and be present for the work, right? Because some people will come in and like really feel, I've had clients who have different diagnosis, and so um, I do have to check in with them a little bit deeper to just really make sure that they're here. I trying to say the right word. They're here for sometimes they can be here for the right reasons, which is like just showing up. But sometimes that's not what's helpful, for where they're at. So I'll try to be as honest as I possibly can, and working with other colleagues that they're working with would be helpful for me to communicate with. But I do have, I have people in my own like references that I work with that are specialists, so depending if there's someone else that I would recommend. But I will start, if I'm taking on somebody, I will start where they are at. So the formula that I bring is there's a lot of range, so we'll really work with, where the client is at, but start at that first intake form would be what I would look at and just read through and make sure that I could fully support the client in the ways that I feel good about.
Thank you so much for that. I know I took us on a couple different roads with questions. That was all of them were important. But that piece, I
Mhm.
thank you for how you answered that also, because there is such a responsibility to be aware of what people are bringing in that they may or may not be speaking to. And that's where, training and personal integrity and having a network are so important. And we're just real advocates for that here. So
Exactly.
glad we
Yeah.
could touch on that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then sometimes, I think clients like they might not be aware of a certain aspect, I had a client who had a lot of disassociation happening, right? So if that's happening, then we have to kind of address that before we can go into some of the somatic work. So there's aspects that start to show up that we can't get to the pelvic floor stuff because let's say the client can't fully stay in her or his body long enough. So we work with that layer first and we see if I could even reach that level of awareness with the client. So it's definitely a space of exploration, as we know. Oh my gosh.
Oh, Michelle.
Well, I appreciate the collaboration that you have, that you're willing to have with other practitioners and obviously with mental health providers. Um, I think that's missing a lot. And that's one of my passions is to connect the medical world with the wellness world because we work far better together than separated. And I think that we can, we do better not standing alone. So
Mhm.
appreciate
Mhm.
that that you're willing to do that when you see, or like if a mental health provider sends you a client that that you're open to that kind of level of connection.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a lot, that we know now about our bodies than we ever have. I work with a lot of clients going through hormonal changes, autoimmune stuff, perimenopause, menopause. Like it's just there's so much, and I do some mentorships under like different people that I'm just always curious to learn more so I can ask better questions. It's not about me being able to support. It's like I want to be able to ask those right questions. So, like you said, Michelle, like so we can lead our clients to exactly where they need support in right now.
Mhm.
And when they're ready for my work or your work, they know where to find us,
Mhm. Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Well, I love the work that you're doing. I definitely want to have an experience with you when I'm
I
back
would love
in
that.
LA. Are people able to see you virtually, or do you just do in person in Los Angeles?
I do both. I do virtually, and I've created three different time slots that are just helpful because, sometimes people will want to really dive into a lot of conversation. And so I have availability virtually for an hour and a half, or a 2 hour session, or they can come and see me in person. And I'm in the little cute little area called West Adams District, right between Culver City and downtown. And if some people will live in LA, but like we'll kind of do a one time in person and maybe one virtually, just so they're not dealing with like driving and traffic. And yes, virtually is just as beneficial. I'll get my clients really like cozy and make sure that they have all that they need to set up for their some of their somatic practices. It's just that I won't be able to be hands-on with them. So I'm actually teaching them to be hands-on with themselves, which
Mhm.
is really powerful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. That's great. And we'll have all your info
Mhm.
below so that people can connect with you. And I appreciate
Wonderful.
you coming on today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies. It was so wonderful. And I'm just so grateful that we're continuing to spread this beautiful work out into the world. So needed. Thank you.
Thank you.